Hey everyone, it's Ben Eubanks. I'm so glad you're here with us today. I'm looking forward to a conversation today, and we're going to get some culture here with incredible accent from my friend Amandeep. So I had the chance to meet Amandeep Shergill a little while back. He's at the team at Automattic, and they are doing some interesting things. He has some good perspectives around talent and the questions we should be asking to really make sure we're aligned with the business and some of the experiences he's learned through his career as a recruiter and moving up into other pieces of the recruiting operations and leadership stack. So excited to hear from Amandeep today. Let's dive into the conversation.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, it's Ben Eubanks. Welcome to We're Only Human. I'm glad you're here with us today and looking forward to a fun conversation all around talent acquisition, hiring, some of the best things we can do there to create some great impact. And I'm excited to have here with me Amandeep from the team over at Automattic. I had a chance to meet last fall face-to-face at an event, and such a great experience. Bugged him, and finally he joined me here on the show, and I'm excited to have him here and talk about some of the things that he's seeing in the market, some of the challenges he's helping the company solve, and some of his history as a recruiter and recruiting leader, and some of the things he's going to bring to the table. So welcome. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me. I know we've been waiting a couple of months to get this going, but I appreciate you waiting around for me.
Hey, good things come to those who wait. And so there we go. I'm excited for this conversation and can't wait to grill you with some of the hard questions, some of the fun questions, and really hear what you're seeing in the market right now. Before we get to that, would you take a moment and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Absolutely. It'd be a pleasure to. So I'm in recruiting. That's how I like to introduce myself. This is what I do. Right now, I'm at Automattic. I've been here now for just over 3.5 years and look after the recruiting function. That's a combination of getting hands-on with some roles, ideally some of the more tricky or more senior, whatever you want to call it, positions, the more interesting things. Also have a small but mighty team, and we support all of the different brands across Automattic, from WordPress.com and Tumblr and WooCommerce, doing a wide variety of things globally. So the team are based from Vancouver to Buenos Aires and Manila and Spain. We're literally globally situated as well. My background, to add on to that, worked in recruiting my whole career, like literally since I graduated, in tech businesses, but what I like to describe as different flavors of tech. I've touched on blockchain, I've done a little bit of fintech, enterprise SaaS, and Automattic just ties a nice ribbon around all of that.
When you're not recruiting, what do you like to do?
Getting personal now.
I don't know if you knew that, Amandeep, but recruiters are people too. So I'm just curious.
I love it. No, I love it. No, I've got a little 18-month-old daughter, so I've spent a lot of time with her, trying to get her walking. She's 18 months and still isn't walking. So that's a big challenge that I'm trying to overcome right now. Beyond that, done a lot of sports and stuff in my past. I think probably typical of most recruiters. Been in sports, but got injured. Can't do as much of that, so I hit the gym. But also a recent hobby of mine to get my mind off things is model building, which is a really weird thing. But
Okay.
got into it over Q4-ish. There's somebody on TikTok called Scott Hanselman, so I'm gonna give him a shout out right now. He's an engineering leader at Microsoft, and he's putting this TikTok up about building this metal transformer, as in from the Transformer series. It doesn't transform, but it's a metal thing that you like metal earth stuff, which you have to bend. And I'm gonna give that a try. So I've built Starscream. I'm currently on Optimus Prime, and I have some Gunpla and stuff like that kind of lined up, ready to go after that.
That is so cool. Man, that's neat. Okay, I'm going to have to ping you afterwards for a photo of one of those. That's really interesting. There's a great book I read a couple years ago called Range. And in it, the author says when you look at people that are Nobel Prize winners, you look at people who are high performers in their field, almost always they have a hobby that has nothing to do at all with the thing they do day to day. And that broader range is what makes them so great, because they see a problem and they see other ways to address it than just, if you're only a recruiter and that's all you spend your time on, you never do anything else, then every problem, the answer is just pick up the phone one more time and call somebody else. But the creativity you have to use to do these other things makes you better at the day-to-day work overall. I don't know if you've got a Nobel Prize in your future or not. I can't speak to that, but just to say, that makes you a high performer across the board if you're doing some other kinds of things. So the data back that up, actually. That's pretty cool.
No, I certainly don't think there's a Nobel Prize in there coming. But my very first manager in recruiting, he actually noticed that. He was like, you've done it. So I studied economics, and he's like, you've got a fairly scientific degree, but you've also got a very creative mind like or output as well, right? So he was like combining those two things together is pretty interesting and broadens your range. So harkens back to exactly what you just said, and that's another full circle thing.
There we go. Okay, so we've got person behind the recruiter title over there. So let's go to the recruiting space. Again, this is what you do. It's what you've done for quite some time now. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that are facing you and your daily work and some of our friends out there listening in that are also doing the hard work of recruiting every day?
Sure. This is an interesting one. There's a lot of this stuff which is time immemorial. Like it doesn't really change. I'm going to talk about what is like pertinent for me right now, and I think pertinent for some other folks out there as well, and probably bleeding over a little bit from the end of last year. And I think the biggest one is right now still quite a bit of uncertainty in the marketplace. This is ranging from like economic factors, from elections all the way through to now what is actually going on in the markets right now, and how is that impacting all the different industries we work in, whether that's tech, whether that's in medical, like different like retail, like we're all impacted by different things that are going on out there. So that's trickling down to like us because it impacts our business, impacts their planning, it impacts our leaders are uncertain, means that our planning is uncertain and it's changing all the time. When somebody pulls 10 recs, it's oh yeah, that's because of those economic conditions. So I think that's one of the big challenges is being able to get around some of that and understanding what those impacts are to us. And then the other is again a theme from last year, which is still coming through. It's doing more with less, but really what that bleeds down into is productivity, efficiency, modernization, like whatever you want to call it, or a combination of those three. We've got to really think about what the future of TA looks like. We've got to think about efficiency and productivity in a different way to just doing more. Like that isn't what productivity and efficiency actually means anymore. And how can we really harness the future of tech to do this stuff as well? I think that's the top level of what I think the biggest challenges are, really lean into.
I'm glad you talked about the doing more with less piece there on and productivity overall, because there's this weird push that I see. There are some companies that push their TA teams like all the way to the limits, pushing as many recs as you can hold, and then let's stack 3 more on top of that. And they just crush them down. And then at the same time, they're like, why aren't you more strategic? Why don't you really know what the business needs from me? Why aren't you these other things? Like, because I'm barely breathing in between trying to just cram these people into recs as fast as I possibly can. There's this weird sort of nuance where productivity, yes, we need to fill roles. We need to make sure that people are able to do the work. Yes. But if that's the only yardstick for success, and then later on someone decides, oh, we want you to also do these other things, you can't do both. You can't magically create more time and do that. And this endless pursuit of productivity and just more and just getting more things done. And oh, AI can help us just do more. There's not a person I know that's doing this work every day. I just wish I could do more stuff. I just want to get more things accomplished. No, I want to find more meaning in this. I want to build more connections. I want to know my stakeholders better. And it's hard to balance all those things. Would you agree with that?
100% agree. I thought I was going crazy when I was thinking these, because I've been thinking these things for a while. And I went to this recruiting labs workshop last year in Santa Barbara. So lucky that I had the opportunity to go. Very small, like 20 people workshop. And this was a really big theme of it. Like the actual topic was how to build QBRs for business leaders and stuff. However, there was a lot more that kind of went behind it. And one of the biggest statements that came out of that day or those couple of days was doing more isn't the answer. That is not the solution. Just doing more, that doesn't work. You've actually got to go in, and if the business wants you to do more, it's cool, where's my investment? That's a very simple statement, but it's cool. Why are we doing this? What's the business impact of doing this? What's the business impact of not doing this? Okay, cool. We're going to miss our financial goals if we don't do this. So where's the investment? What investment are you going to give me in order for me to get this done? It's not doing more, it's getting the investment in order to do it. And that was a big theme of one of the things I pulled out of that workshop.
The picture I just had in my head, I can't remember what the name of the movie is, the Nike movie where they first started making the shoes and they were trying to get them onto the basketball players. And, oh, look, you can't have that much color because it breaks the rules. And so we got to change the shoes. Hold on, what's the fine? Just pay the fine. What's the cost of not complying? Just pay that. It's worth it to us because we're going to sell more. It's going to be worth it in the end. And we had a little more of that attitude when someone says, hey, we need this from you. Oh, you got to report this every single week. And you're like, what happens if I don't report that? And no one really cares. Okay, then I probably will just not. But hey, this is going to impact something. As you said, then maybe we need to talk about what we're going to stop doing so we can start doing that. Or are we going to get some additional investment? I need another person on the team. I need a tool to do that. What are we going to do to make that happen? Because you can't just say, do more, because more is vague, amorphous, and it's always a moving target. More and more. And how do I know I've done enough? That's no one can decide that. No one knows. So interesting. Okay. So one of the things that I'm really pushing on this year is looking not just at being reactive, just responding, just putting out fires, but really leaning in, being more proactive, being a better advisor to the business, all those sorts of things. I'd love to hear if you have any advice, if you've seen anything be successful in your own career, in your own work, when it comes to making that shift, or what, if you're like, hey, listen, I worked at a company that was very proactive. We had a really good talent planning process. And here was a key thing that fit into that. Anything that you could share on that front that would help anyone listening in is please get me out of this reactive firefighter mode and into a fire prevention mode, if you will.
That's a really good question. And I've got a couple of examples. I'm going to go back to like my first in-house role. So after agency, I went to go and work for a company called Intuit. I'm sure the folks in the States will know that company extremely well, but they were not that big in Europe when I joined them. But the challenge I had was I joined and the person who hired me, they were through an RPO and they got let go after 10 weeks. So I was thrown into the deep end. It was like, here's whatever, it was like 30 odd, 38 new roles or whatever it was. And I was just like, go and hire them. And I was like, what do I do? Like, how do I even know where to start with this thing? And it could have been very easy for me to and I did for the first couple of weeks, just go, I've got to manage 38 roles. I've got to get candidates. I've got to manage these stakeholders. I've got to do I was literally drowning in 38 open roles and behind on everything and all that kind of stuff. So I decided I couldn't keep up, but I didn't know what to do. So I actually went to the country manager, which is scary, right? I'm pretty young and inexperienced. I'm there on a contract. I'm not a full-time employee. And I'm like, hey, Rich, I've got all these openings and what's the priority? What do we do about this? Like, I can't hide them all at the same time. And he smiled and said, let's take a walk and we'll talk about it. And he just started asking me about my thought process. He's like, how are you thinking about these roles? He didn't just tell me the answer, right? So this is what I really liked about this. He got me to think, why? Right? Why are these roles important? Why are we hiring for these positions? Why do you think we're doing this? And we got down the road a little bit. And he said, right, so you need to go and talk to two people, right? You need to go and talk to our CMO and our head of sales. I went and talked to them. And of course, head of sales is important. Go and hire my roles. And so I was like, cool, I'll hire sales roles. But before I did that, I talked to the CMO. And he took me through a very interesting process. He was like, where does the EMEA revenue from Intuit come from? I'm like, it's got to be sales, right? I don't know this. So I was like, sales. And he goes, no. He goes, all of our business comes from marketing. It all comes from digital marketing and acquisition. It does not come from sales because they're building an enterprise sales function which doesn't have any customers yet. He goes, so my question to you can put the question back on me. He goes, what do you want to impact? Revenue today or do you want to impact revenue tomorrow? And so I was like, interesting. Going back to what Rich was saying to me, we've got revenue goals we need to achieve for this quarter. So boom, and the next quarter. It instantly got me a way of being able to prioritize all of our open roles. And it was like, let's prioritize the revenue generating digital marketing roles. We can keep the plate spinning for these sales roles. So we can get those hires made next, et cetera, et cetera. And the learning point for me was really getting to the nuts and bolts of what the business is looking for and putting that back into our hiring planning. And it's not just what our hiring stakeholders are telling us, but getting deeper and under the skin of what the business is really trying to achieve. What are the OKRs? What is your board telling you need to achieve? What does your CEO really care about? That's what we need to be really digging into. And I've followed that through every single role I've been in. And when you're a TA leader, it's even more important. And there's two elements to when you're a leader, because your recruiters need to be doing this with their hiring functions. Like they need to be really deep into understanding why is it that your head of marketing for a certain business unit wants to open 8 new roles? What is that doing? What is that achieving? We've had this recently here where one of our stakeholders was saying, I'm hiring for 8 new people. And I was like, great, that's amazing. Tell me about it. And they started to go through all of those individual openings. I was like, hold on a second, let's take a step back. Where are these 8 roles fitting into your org and why? And then she started telling me, and I was like, okay, how does this impact your business plan? Do you have a business plan? And she was like, oh yeah. And then she started pulling out all of these decks. And I was like, amazing. Okay, this is really cool. I was like, but what I'm not seeing is the link between these two things. Like you're talking about a revenue impact from these goals, impacting the customer lifecycle journey, et cetera, et cetera. Where does this role fit into that? Because I'm not seeing a direct correlation. And instantly there was like, okay, we need to do some more work here. So it was like, let's hit pause on the hiring because we can't go and hire these people without knowing the true business impact. And we did all of that work and then started doing the hiring. It didn't take very long. There was motivation to get that done quickly because revenue goals and everything else. And that frees up, if recruiters can do that work to an extent, it frees up recruiting leaders to have that next level of conversation and to really understand the future planning. So that's already been done. But what I want to know is what's happening in 6 months. You're hiring for 8 people now, but are we going to have to hire above these people, below these people, alongside these people? What's going on next and what's going on after that? So that we can put the right planning in place to be able to impact that further down the line.
Do you think you got that consultative, big picture view because you had that model for you? You mentioned your area manager or country manager who, instead of just telling you the answer to the test, said, let's talk about the concepts in the test and let you arrive at the answers yourself. Do you think you had that model for you and that's why you do that now and use that day to day? Or are you naturally wired to do that because you were an econ guy and you love the behaviors and all that other stuff? Talk about that a little bit, because I think some people might hear that and you're like, I would have never thought to ask that question or push back on that. You're not being in their face. You're being like encouraging, like, yes, this is a great path. Let's make sure that things line up. I don't want you to come back later and say, oh man, I wish I'd have thought this through. So you're trying to help them. Where do you think that comes from?
This exact conversation with my lead not long ago. We talked about it and like, how do we get all of our recruiters on this mode? It's because there's an element of this is learning, and another element of this is kind of natural as well. So like I've grown up, my upbringing is in family business. So my dad's been in business literally since the age of 14. He went to his dad and said, he saw a shop down the road from where they lived and he was like, Dad, we've got to go and buy that shop. It was just a little candy store, like what we call a corner shop, right? And it was literally just a kind of buy and sell, what you would call chips in the States, in the morning to like kids as they're going to school. And they would literally run that, go to school, come back in the afternoon, open it. And that's how my dad was brought up. And he still does business today. He's never worked for anybody else. So I've grown up in that environment. And getting to know business sense, I think, is just part of the DNA. And so when Rich took me through those things at Intuit, it was very much just a natural conversation for me because I was already relaying that back to where are we making money? Where is monetization? Like, all this kind of stuff. And going and joining a VC-backed business was actually very alien to me. I was like, why are we in a business that is just burning cash and has no monetization model? This makes no sense to me. How have we got a valuation when we don't even generate revenue? Like, this is a genuine case like I was in with one of the businesses I joined and had to really work with that founder to put something in place. It was very interesting.
I didn't realize you and I had that similar sort of connection there because my dad was working for his dad's machine shop when he was 14, eventually bought it from him when he was about 30 years old, 40 years old, somewhere in there, and still runs it to this day. And so that's the only job he's ever had in his lifetime. And so similar kind of thing, though. I grew up in that. I saw that. And so I always knew, hey, this thing happens, but all other stuff led to it. All these decisions, all the other pieces, all the other priorities that were in consideration filtered down to this one thing. And it wasn't just a one-day decision just made at that moment. It all came to that. And so you saw those things modeled out and now are applying that in a different world. It'd be so much easier if someone just buying a bag of chips from you, but you're selling something a lot bigger, a lot more comprehensive and complex than that. So interesting. Okay. I'm trying to picture that as one of the audience out there listening who may not have that sort of bent. How do you pick that up? And I think some of the things, like I said, you had it modeled, but you've had a chance to start practicing it. And what I would encourage anyone hearing some of the things you're sharing there is it may feel awkward. You mentioned that earlier. It was a little scary. I'm the newest person on the team. Right? If I ask the wrong question, they may be like, he's not a fit here and just move you on. But you asked that question and it got you an opportunity to learn and made you invaluable to that company and beyond. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to, there's two things to that. Just be naturally curious. I think recruiters are curious people. That's what we do, right? We're interviewing candidates, we're interviewing them and getting linear and questioning. We're asking like so many different types of questions to our candidates. Why don't we do the same with our business? Just employ the same things that you do with a candidate with your business stakeholders, and you're going to find out the right information. Just constantly ask yourself why. And if it doesn't make sense to you, go deeper until it makes sense. This is how I started in recruiting. I joined an agency and was like, go and start this desk. And I was like, I knew nothing about this technology. Nothing. It was Microsoft SharePoint at the time. And I was like, what is this? And they said, you've got 2 days to go do some research online. And I did. And then they were like, here's a database, go and call people and go and find out the differences between SharePoint 4 and SharePoint 3. I was like, oh, okay, so this is how you do that, right? That's what I was doing. And I was literally finding out about the trade by talking to people. And business-wise, yeah, it wasn't just the corner shop anymore. But my final year of uni, my dad actually said to me, go and start up a Papa John's. He bought a franchise and it was bare bones. It was a concrete box and said, Papa John's won £180,000 to fit the store out. That's your budget. Go and do it. And I was just like, what do you mean? And he goes, there's the plans. I know you're at your final year, but go and do it. And I did it in 100 grand, started that store, and it was the busiest store opening in the UK because We just have, all we have to do is marketing. It's not hard. I followed again what my dad had done with his business, principles of that, combining it with some modern elements, did my research, did what I had to do, and put it out there, got it done. And it was cool. It was successful. But it's just about being curious. It's about asking the questions. It's about not being afraid. You've been hired for that reason. Create that added value. Don't just be the transactional person.
I'm going to give one more book mention. I mentioned one already, but I'll give one more that ties to that so well that I've recommended so many times over the years. It's called Turn the Ship Around, and it's by a retired naval officer. And he talks about how he was getting to his final posting in the military. This is going to be my reward for years of service. They're going to put me in the best ship. It's going to be like a easy cruise out and finish off. They put him in charge of the worst ship in the entire naval fleet. What? Who did I make mad to put me in this job? Dang it. And he comes in the first day and finds out that the previous leader measured their success by how little could get done when they weren't around. The exact opposite of what you just said, being creative. We hired you for a reason. And so he started changing the culture there, literally turning the ship around by saying, someone to ask a question. And then he was like, I don't know. That's your expertise. What do you think we should do? And started putting those things back on them. And they realized he really does trust what I'm going to say. And if it's a judgment call, he can make that. He's the captain, but at least then he's putting that effort back on them to say, no, your voice does matter. So I really appreciate that piece. He talks about being curious as a leader and the value that drives. And I'm hearing that from you here within the recruiting role, that same interest you have in knowing that candidate and how I can match this opportunity with them potentially is the same interest and curiosity we need to have when we're talking to our leaders and understanding, really, I had no idea that revenue was driven so heavily by that activity. Tell me more about that. That's a real opportunity to learn and to make yourself better in the work you're doing.
I'm with you. That's a great example. I love that. I'm going to have to go and get that book.
There you go. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, every conversation it feels like that I'm having right now touches on to some degree AI and what it's doing and what it's changing and everything else. Any thoughts on that front? What innovations do you think that we're going to see? Any risks that are out there? Just a broad brush with that one. Anything that you want to kick in on that front? Because even before we started recording, you and I were talking about some of the things that we're seeing in the market where the opportunities might be. And I'm just curious what sort of perspective you might have on that front.
Sure. AI is coming. I don't know. I feel like a broken record at the minute talking about AI, but we've been talking about AI for so many years in recruiting, especially in TA. And people started off being super scared of it. And I was like, I always challenged that. I said, AI is here to help us. It's going to boring stuff that you just don't want to do anymore. That's what it's going to do. And it's going to enable us to free up our time so that we can be more strategic. We can add more value to a business. AI is not going to take over anything tomorrow, but it is going to help us. And right now, I would still call it very bare bones. It's very cool, and it's helping us in multiple different ways. And I'll go through some examples. But it's still really, we haven't really scratched the surface of what AI can do for recruiting and TA in particular. An example, we use a tool called MetaView for interview note taking. Not a fancy thing. It's not crazy or anything else. And I remember when I joined this call, it said transcription's been enabled. It's the same kind of thing. But MetaView goes a little bit deeper. It actually organizes the notes into questions and bullet point answers, and it can expand upon it. You can create a summary, and you can even say, these are the different topics I want to go into, and I want to go deeper into this one. I don't want to hear about this one. So you can create like your hiring manager pitches, whatever you want to call it, using this one tool. It's got a ChatGPT-esque feature built into it, so you can even query your interview to be like, oh yeah, what does it say about compensation again? And it'll pull all of that stuff out for you. Very cool. It's a time saver, and it's number one, it's a time saver because you don't have to worry about writing notes, tidying those notes up, putting them into a scorecard, and then writing up pitch decks. It's all this kind of stuff, right? It does it all for you. So it's super, super simple. But more importantly, it's enabling you to really focus in on the candidate experience and your craft. So you're not having to write up a list of questions on the side and be like, okay, I'll have to follow this exact list of questions because I wasn't listening to what the candidate just said. You can actually listen and you can dig deeper. You can skip around questions if you need to. You can get really, really deep into what that candidate's trying to say to you, and you can sell a lot better. Part of our job. We're looking at some other things. I know before the call started, we were talking a little bit about some stuff around like inbound candidates and stuff. We actually experimented with working with an external company, built our own tool, help with inbound. Like inbound's exploded over the last few months, right? Yeah. Not just for us, I'm sure for everybody. We were like, we're drowning in inbound applications. How do we cut through the noise? And it worked to a degree, but not fully. And that's okay, because we learned some things from that and we realized that this kind of a tool is valuable. So we've been talking to people like HireEasy, Deeply Talented, Cubby. There's a few tools out there now which are specifically focusing in on the inbound journey of candidates. Some of these are now expanding into outbound. And we're seeing a really wide variety of things. You know, you've got Gem in this space as well, but some of them are really basic AI, and that's okay for some folks. Some of them are really deep, and they actually have AI models that learn based on what you're doing and also what you're feeding back into that model. So that's really cool. And they're starting to learn, and this is a big thing for me, right? So AI for me sometimes isn't adapting. It's doing something it wants to do, but it's not really doing it for you or for your organization. There's a lot of personalization that goes into recruiting. We're a human-centric side of the business. We need to be very personal, and AI at the moment isn't. But if it's learning from what we're doing, it can become that. And that's only going to enable it to be a better partner for us. So I really like those types of tools and how they can help us. If we get 1,000 people coming in for a job, if we can go and surface the top 50, like we're spending time with the best people for that job from that inbound funnel. The risks to that is a lot, right? First of all, are we actually identifying the top 50 people? What are those other 950 people in that pipeline? How do we know that they're not relevant? How do we know that, has it got it right? There's always that question mark in the back of my mind. However, a lot of these tools we're very conscious of this, and we're making sure that there's always, again, it's an AI term right now, it's a buzzword, but human in the loop. So making sure that it's not making decisions on our behalf, so we can audit what the AI is doing. It's not doing something without us approving that decision, and we can go in and double check that this is actually aligned with what we want and what we want it to be doing. So that's a really important part of this early stage of AI jumping through. But we've got to be ready for when it's good enough for it to go solo. That's what's in my mind.
The human in the loop comment made me smile because I was talking with a head of learning the other day, and they were doing some calibration on succession work, and they used an algorithm to do the first cut. And then they're like, we're doing human in the loop because we're looking at what the algorithm gave us. I said, as you said, who was in the consideration before the algorithm saw them? That's what I want. That's where you're supposed to be looking at and saying, are these equitable? Are they doing the right things? Is it skipping over some people? What do we know? If you're just looking at that short list, then you've already missed your chance to potentially impact what the algorithm's going to do. So I agree with you there. We've got to be married up with that. We've got to be paying attention throughout the entire process, or we just show up at the very last mile. We put all the faith in that algorithm that's going to do all the right things at the beginning. That faith could be misplaced depending on how it was trained and so on. So yeah, we could go for a whole hour on that one. I want to be respectful of your time. We've covered some really good ground. I have 15 more questions I want to ask you, but I know we're getting close here on the time we have. If someone wants to connect with you, wants to follow you, wants to learn more about what you're doing, I didn't invite you back overall, but if someone wants to do that, are you okay if they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Yeah. More than happy for them to connect with me. I've been saying this for about a year, but I need to start my own blog, and working for Automattic and having WordPress.com is like one of our main products. I have no excuse. That's something I'm really going to have to get into, and it will be coming this year. So that'll be another way for folks to get in touch with me as I start developing that this year.
Perfect. When you get that done, go send me the link. I'll make sure and add it back to the show notes, so anyone hearing this later on can come back and find that as well. And you've got an incredible radio voice, Amandeep. So just do an audio podcast or audio blog or whatever else, and you can skip over all the writing that's taking you the time and still get all the good stuff out of it. All that said, this has been so much fun. I appreciate your time, your expertise. There's some incredible insights you shared today, and I can't wait to get this out. I know the audience is going to love it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Scratch the surface of some of those topics. Happy to come back and deep dive if you ever want me in the future.
100%. I can't wait. Thank you again to everybody else out there. I hope you got your good notes, good ideas today from this. I know I really appreciated the insights around strategy and being curious and really plumbing the depths of not just transactional recruiting, but real high impact strategic recruiting. That's my best takeaway today. We'll catch you again next time on We're Only Human. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.